the magnitude of the AI's impact by 2030 is estimated to be almost $16 trillion. And today, there are only two countries with greater than that GDP. One is China, it's about 20 trillion, and the US is about $31 trillion. No other country has that magnitude of the GDP like the AI is able to do in the next few years.
So we're building essentially a country that is in the top 3 globally in terms of GDP.
AI to Go podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the AI to Go podcast. My name is Johannes, and we help you turn AI pilots into clear business outcomes. Today's guest is Reddy Mallidi, one of the leading experts in the field of enterprise AI. Born in South India, Reddy became a Silicon Valley tech executive at Intel and Autodesk. His books on enterprise AI and AI agents became both #1 bestsellers on Amazon. Welcome, Reddy.
Great to be here, and it's great to see you again, Johannes.
Thanks for making it. I'm so looking forward to our chat today. So there's a lot to uncover. We will talk about all things AI in the enterprise and AI agents today. Before we do that, I would like to learn a bit more about yourself. I knew that you grew up in rural India. What are some of the early memories from that time that shaped you as a person?
This was the time when we didn't have easy access to schools. I was walking 3 miles when I was 5 years old. My school was 3 miles away, so I had to walk every day through the rice fields, and that was. But it shows you the opportunities what the education can make in someone's life, right? It's I grew up with a little access to education, and I studied it later in my life. I went into to get my degrees in engineering from my Indian Institute of Technology. I came to the U.S. I got master's in computer science, and I also got MBA. It's human ingenuity is boundless, whether we are living in the AI era or some other times. Human ingenuity and the resilience, those are the human traits that no one can take away.
Even today in the AI age, it's all about authenticity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You talked about your aunt. She had a photographic memory. Despite she had minimal formal education, she had amazing storytelling skills. Now, you are here to translate complex AI concepts for business leaders. Do you see a connection between her skills and your work to demystify AI?
One of the things I would say is, now that you ask, Johannes, it's my aunt. She was born when the British were ruling India in 1920s. In those days, very few women actually went to school. So by those standards, my aunt, she studied up to 5th grade and considered like very literate, very knowledgeable. And she was, although sometimes you don't measure your knowledge by your degrees or your level of education. She studied lots of books, and she would tell everything, any of those stories, in a way that I was a little, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. What it's in rural India, there was not much, and so she could tell this that you don't forget. It's like the movie is actually happening. To your question, demystifying AI or any of these technical topics, it's you need to be telling people in a way they understand. This is actually why in my books, Leading with AI Agents, when I was trying to describe the architecture, then the approach I took was the architecture of AI agents would be very dense and technical in nature, but my audience is both technical leaders as well as business leaders and professionals. And then, so one of the things that I did was, one of my friends, he went to Everest Base Camp. So I used that to actually describe the architecture, how the AI agents would do that journey planning, right? So that's a way to, I guess, bring the skills that my aunt had into the AI agents, describing it in a way that people understand.
How would you describe the story of AI that we've seen over the past couple of years to people who are completely unfamiliar with the issue? What would be your analogy to describe what's happening in AI across organizations?
People describe this as this is like the internet or it is like another tool. In my opinion, it's actually none of those are accurate. Here's why I say that those descriptions miss the mark, because it's not like a cloud, or it's not like an RPA, or it's not like a technology. People view AI as a tool or a technology. They're missing it completely. Whether it is in the enterprise perspective or it is you and me as a regular people, right? Every day we use so many tools. It's completely missing the thing, because the magnitude of the change is it is touching every facet of life, every facet of human life, every facet of corporate environment. What I mean by that is when you get up and let's say you go to the gym and you drive, and finding the optimal routes when you are driving to the gym, right? To From work perspective, it's touching every facet: human resources, operations. How do you develop products and sales and marketing? How do you gain that intelligence to close the deals faster? How do you make their onboarding journey way, way better? Every aspect of your work in the enterprise is being impacted in a way, in a very positive way by AI. So that's why the comparison to specific tool or specific technology, it misses the boat. It is, in my opinion, Johannes, it is like the industrial revolution that happened a few hundred years ago. It's the magnitude of the AI's impact by 2030 is estimated to be almost $16 trillion. And today, there are only two countries with greater than that GDP. One is China, it's about 20 trillion, and the US is about $31 trillion. No other country has that magnitude of the GDP like the AI is able to do in the next few years.
Yeah. So we're building essentially a country that is in the top 3 globally in terms of GDP with all those
Absolutely.
AI efforts and
Absolutely.
initiatives.
That's a fantastic way to say it. It's like we're building the third biggest economy with the AI.
I like that. You've been building with AI since its infancy days. And I would say your career was built on knowledge, wisdom, experience, curiosity, right?
Yeah.
What would you recommend a newbie at college or who just graduated from high school today? What are the skills that he or she should acquire in the AI age?
Excellent question. This is, increasingly, Johannes, what I keep hearing is college education is irrelevant and you don't need to go to college. In a way, I don't necessarily agree with that, not because, I went to college a few times, but rather what type of knowledge you want to acquire. Whether you go to college or you go to a trade school or you do apprenticeship, it's different, right? It's for all the universities were established in the olden days. People used to go to teachers and learn under their tutelage, right? It's like ways of learning is different. It doesn't mean you're in the four walls of the university. So what I would say is learning, regardless of where you learn, is going to be a big differentiator, because learning adds the critical thinking. Again, now the critical thinking is not still the domain of it. You can see the reasoning, yeah, they do reasonably well with all the trained information. The critical thinking, especially when you have to think cross functionally, AI is not great still. It fails. So that's why, as humans, we need to have those skills. Example is, yeah, you can use Codex or Claude to write super good code. But what happens if you have some challenge or the code is not running efficiently? You need to go and see where the challenge is, right? And if you are bringing, let's say, multiple angles for, I'll just say, I ran operations and that included the customer experience at Autodesk. The mindset is like, okay, it's not just you can use existing knowledge and then operational excellence oriented questions you can ask and then say, it will just give you this is how you do it because it was trained on operational excellence methodologies. But the thing, what it would miss is if you focus completely very operations cost centric way, what does it do? For example, companies just think that you want to save on a few dollars on customer calls, and then I don't want to have any customer representatives. And what happens is the customer experience may be compromised. If the customer is spending 2 hours instead of 15 minutes with an agent, you're compromising customer experience. So as a customer advocate, if I lose the customer, that's a wrong way you're using AI. So this is where your critical thinking and bringing in multiple angles, customer experience, not losing the customer becomes very important because the long-term value of the customer is much higher than a few dollars you save by deflecting 100% of your call. That's right. So that kind of critical thinking needs to be there. And that's where the humans make a big difference.
Talking about humans and making a difference, you were responsible for AI and digital transformation at Autodesk. This was from 2019 to early 22, so right before ChatGPT was launched and generative AI hit the global stage. I still think there are many lessons that you learned in human behavior and change management that still apply today. Based on your personal experience, what are the human reasons why AI transformation programs and AI pilots fail today?
This is an excellent point, Johannes. What people don't realize is that you just deploy and things will happen and people will adopt. Often, and the most recent a report from MIT came that 95% of the AI projects are not generating any value or outright failures. And if you go and root cause all these, I can tell you most of them are not for technical reasons. It is a lot of people related challenges. Yeah, they are causing these programs to fail. It could be not aligning with the strategic objectives of the company and people not adopting, and the complexity associated with bringing in AI when you have all this infrastructure that's old, 10 years, 15 years. Example, when I was at Autodesk and leading this multi-hundred million dollar digital transformation, we had 15 years of data. And
Mm.
let's imagine that, 3, 4 years ago, you just bring in AI and then, oh, it's you deploy AI and your problems will disappear. They don't, because it's like, you're moving from a perpetual licensing model to SaaS at the time, and the systems didn't have any of those capabilities. The processes were highly, highly manual. So there's a big, big human element. We needed to rework the workflows because this is another aspect of AI is you need to, when you look at anything in the company world, the workflows, when you look at, okay, you can bring AI, how AI can augment human beings, you need to rework the workflows completely because now you got the humans, you got digital agents, digital workers in the loop, and then how do you interact? So the workflow completely changes. I can give you an example of how in Vilnius, Lithuania, there was a hospital. There was a lot of resistance to adopting AI. And it's like, oh, we are the experts, right? Why should we? And then They augmented AI in a way that doesn't replace it's not like replacing the radiologist, for example, but you get the AI to give hey, this is what we think, and then it flags the radiologist to check it. So what happened was 80%, they found 80% of them, they don't require these radiologists to weigh in. The other 20% they do. So that actually frees up, and they're able to handle at any given time, they're able to handle many more cases per radiologist or health clinician, if you will. So that's the capability, but it needs to take care of many things that are not tech, that are people oriented, change management, making sure that you're bringing in the experts, the functional experts, and also the governance aspects. It's how do you make sure that the bias is mitigated? How do you make sure that there is security? How do you make sure that there's explainability? There are lots of tools available to incorporate that as part of your AI strategy and development.
Let's make that a bit more practical. Like if I have a team that is afraid of using an AI tool, or even like integrating a digital teammate, so to say, like an AI agent, how do you tackle that? Like there's a lot of fear because ultimately the agent might take my job. So why should I share any kind of data and knowledge with the agent now? How do you tackle that? What is your advice?
Let me give you this example. When I came to Autodesk, my operations organization was drowning in manual processes. Crazy. We had probably our customer client services team, and without touching at least 10 to 15 different systems, they couldn't solve a customer problem because it was so many systems were there. What happened was it was tacked on over a long period of time, 10, 15 years, and then the business model changed from perpetual licensing to SaaS, software as a service, right? So the systems didn't evolve. So we had at that time a patchwork of things, and that needed the human glue to make these things work. And one of the things I emphasized was, besides relooking at all the processes, what we did was leverage the RPA. At that time, RPA was the thing. So what we did was focused on the few use cases where that would make a difference. Let me give you an example. Team in Europe, for example, right? They have a VAT calculation. This may be a simple example, but they need to do that calculate in one system, cut and paste into another one. They do it all day in and day out. It's like, okay, it's just, we deployed, it's a simple RPA, very elegant solution with RPA bot. We deployed it, and our client services team, the representatives, this cut and paste, that made it all go away. They loved it, right? And then the licensing files, for example, the software licensing files, they were spending a lot of hours of time because we had enterprise customers. And what we did was we used RPA to automate that process. So that saved hundreds of hours for our folks. So when they saw these quick wins, I don't mean they see it tomorrow, but very tangible wins that made their life easier. They became believers and also advocates. So they need to see, one thing I would say is they need to see the benefit. And the second thing is it needs to make their life easier, not replace them, because it didn't replace our guys. But what happened was our business was growing at 20+%, so it doubled. So what we were able to do was, when the business doubled, we were able to support the business with the same team, because per person we were able to handle more cases, if you will. So that's that's the thing you want to do, say, bringing in the right use cases, showing them the benefits. And change management involves being very transparent. You need to be transparent and tell what you're doing and why you are doing. If you don't have the transparency and then, you tell after the fact, oh, well, we are going to reduce 10%, 20%, and then you just get rid of 20% of the employees overnight, that's not going to give you credibility or the transparency or the trust you need. What I found in my experience was when you are transparent, even if the message is painful, people will come along. I don't think, people would say, oh, we are going to prevent AI to be introduced. But if you tell them, hey, why you're doing and how you're also upskilling and enabling them with skills to use AI, then people will come along the journey. They will bring you all kinds of use cases where AI will make the things easier. They will become advocates. Of course, some jobs will be affected. It's if anyone says that, oh, we will protect every job, that's a lie. But how do you prepare your workforce effectively so they become super enabled or they become superhumans with AI? Then you bring the right value.
We'll talk about the superhuman aspect a little later. I want to talk about your signature question. When executives talk to you and say, hey, we need AI, you have one famous response.
Why and what business problem you are trying to solve. If you don't know this specific business problem you are going after, then it becomes chasing the next shiny object, right? This is, I can give you lots of examples. This was when I was at one of my previous companies, a colleague of mine, she was head of tax and she was enamored with technology. And she would say, oh, Reddy, can your team come and deploy this, bots? I would love to have RPA bots. And then by then, actually, we put the intake process that would look at the use case and then what is the value it will create, how many hours it will save. There are ways you can calculate the ROI. What it's going to be, is this tangible business value creating? What is the hour saved, or how much investment it is going to require, and then maintenance it requires, and benefits are there non-measurable. For example, if the customer experience improves, it is going to make someone's life easier. There are tangible or intangible benefits. And it turns out the RPA that she was asking for, it would require at the time, a month for us to develop and deploy, test and all that. And then it would save 1 hour every month, 1 hour every month for her team. That's negative ROI, right? So it's the bad way to look at technology. That's why, what problem are you trying to solve? What use cases are you trying to leverage AI for? Do they have the ROI? May not be today, but look at the 1 year, 2 years, 3 year horizon. You are just bringing competitive strategic advantage. For, let's say, if it is making 25% your product development 25% faster, or it is helping you take, let's say, 70% of your issues coming from the customers solved, instead of the average turnaround time, let's say half a day, if it solves you that in 1 hour, that's a huge win, right? The customer, there are cost savings, but also it is the customer experience, and CSAT probably would go to 95%. So those are the tangible business benefits. You need to think, and then where does it make sense?
How do I choose the right AI use cases and the outcomes that I'm optimizing for?
You look at all the opportunities. When you do the opportunity scan across the company, and then I have a criteria from strategic, finance, feasibility, all these, data availability. There are multiple things into the scorecard system you evaluate, and then you map them based on it. I'll show you this. I think the people watching the the podcast can see it. So then you make all your opportunities, use cases into this 2x2 matrix. The top ones are quick wins, meaning the impact is high, effort is low. That's the quick win. And my recommendation is to at least 50% of your use cases that you're going to invest to put AI should be from this quick wins. And then impact is pretty big, but they may be very, very complex. They may take a year or two, or maybe even longer to deliver it because they're complex and it takes more investment. But what they do is they bring you strategic advantage, like the ones I'm talking about. If you can reduce, let's say, 50% of your development time, that's a huge competitive advantage over your competition. But I don't think that's going to happen with agency that you can deploy in 3 months. Simple reflex agents. You can deploy that. You probably need some learning agents that may take a year to be perfecting. And then the ROI would be there. So those two buckets, probably 30% of the investment should be going to the big bets, and then 50+% should be going to the quick wins. And then use the framework I laid out from a strategic alignment, financial, technical feasibility. And of course, you need to look into your organizational readiness too. So if your organization doesn't have the capabilities, do you build or you buy or you augment? In the AI agents book, I discuss those things.
Let's get into that. What is an agent and what is like an RPA-based automation? And when should companies think I need an agent versus I need like a traditional RPA kind of automation?
Yeah, so a great question. By the way, it's like people think we have been using the chatbots. What is the difference between chatbots and the agents, right? Here is a simple way to look at it. Something that's very rules based. If you see a stop sign, stop, right? That's very rule based. Or if it says no left turn, no left turn. So it's very rules based. That's an RPA chatbot for simpler things. There are perfectly fine if you can define it with rules engines. Absolutely fine. They'll be okay. The example I was giving you earlier, that calculation. It's okay. If you're doing this in France, do this. You have 5 things, and I calculate, just put it right. But here's what happens. Agents, on the other hand, you have the RPA, that's robotic process automation, and then agents have, it's a similar acronym, if you will, but they perceive the environment and they actually react. But what happens is once they perceive, they start to reason. So it's RPA with the acronym got shifted. It's perceive, react, and then act. I'm sorry, perceive, reason, and act. Because what happens is you perceive the environment. Just like I'll give you a very simple example, a thermostat. So it knows the temperature is 60 degrees, and while it says it needs to be 70 degrees. So it perceives the environment, and then it reasons it needs to be 70 degrees. But you see, the difference is an RPA, you can program that into rules. But the difference with an AI agent is that, Johannes actually typically is at home, but he's not at home. So So I don't need to turn the temperature to 70 degrees. I'll just make the temperature 65. That would be an agent, because what it does is it actually perceives the environment. It knows the signals. It is reading everything versus the simple rules-based RPA. And then it acts. Oh, well, when Johannes is not at home, he keeps the temperature at 65 degrees. So I will bump it up. So it gives the signal to the thermostat to increase turn on the heat and increase it to 65. So that's the difference. And then additionally, what happens is AI agents have the memory. So they remember the context and they learn, as I said, when he's not here, he keeps it as 65. But when he puts it as away a vacation, then I can put it to 60 degrees. So that learning and memory, understanding the context, AI agents make those things enable. They look at the patterns, and they're not rule based and very brittle. So that's the big difference.
There's a big promise both in terms of what agents can do in terms of task completion and autonomous work. Also, there's a lot about continuous improvement via self-learning, memory-based self-learning, that is, right?
Yeah.
I want to level set the conversation a little bit, because AI agents are the shiny object that everybody is trying to catch now in the enterprise.
Right.
Based on your experience, what kind of problems can agents solve consistently, and where do they fail today?
Here's where I would be careful thinking that AI agents can solve every problem and we can let them loose and be autonomous. I would be careful with that. There may be situations that you can make them autonomous and they can solve the problems on their own, and maybe 100% of a given problem. But here is where I would be careful. I'll give you the context for this. So AI agents, you can think of an AI agent like a driver of a car, and then the car has an engine. In this case, in most of the cases, the engines are LLMs. It could be ChatGPT or your own open source or Claude, any of those, Gemini, any of those, right? So by nature, these LLMs are transformer models. They're probabilistic, and that's why you give the same prompt multiple times, you get slightly different answers because they're not deterministic. That needs to be very clear. What that means is, what is the acceptable level, right? So where do you draw the guardrails? If it's a regulated industry, you want to make sure the confidence level on the responses you're getting is very high. For example, one of the projects I worked on is with a pharma company. They absolutely wanted 95.3% confidence on the response. This is for suture inspection, because you can't compromise. If the zone did not form around the suture, you don't want to put that. So we put 95.3% confidence on that. So when it has that, and we also put a threshold of less than 1% error rate. If you don't put those
Per
bounds,
individual step.
yeah. So then you are not going to accept it, right? So this is where you may even use other models besides LLM. For example, Aviso AI uses more of large quantitative models to supplement LLMs. The Another company, EasyML, they have their own machine learning models, so they can give higher confidence. They're more deterministic, and they supplement with what exists. Again, in AI is not like one monolithic solution. You get many quantitative models, deep learning, transformer, different things. That's why the orchestration becomes very, very important and very, very complex when it comes to AI agents. So here you need to be very, very careful assuming that AI gives you complete trustworthy answers. So it's very, very important having those guardrails.
You also talk about agent networks and connected intelligence systems in your book.
Yes,
It sounds super powerful, but also kind of like a management nightmare. How do you
it
manage a
is.
system where 5 AI agents are talking to each other and something goes wrong? Who's accountable?
Yeah, exactly. That's a fantastic point. I'm at Johannes. Everyone talks about on YouTube, LinkedIn. Everyone, oh, I just created this agent. It just took like 2 seconds. But what they don't talk about is take a workflow and just think about a simple example of a booking a trip to Tokyo. And so if you have an agentic system, that's you are going to have the agentic system would have probably 10 agents, someone that's going to be checking your personal preferences, what kind of food you want, what restaurants you would be liking in Tokyo, and what time, the seasons you would want to go and what places. It's complex, right? It's 10 different things, and you may be an athlete or you may be a skier. So it needs to account for all these things. And what happens is the agentic system, these multi agents, the underlying systems are LLM. So you got the probabilistic and the non deterministic output coming. And let's say you got out of the 10 agents, one hallucinated and gave the wrong answer, and there was no checks and balances. You didn't have the right guardrails, and then what happens is this output goes to the next agent, and then it comes with the plan, and then you blindly assume it's all good, and then maybe you end up going there, and then let's hypothetically speaking, well, there's no snow to ski on, right? Or you go there, and then the tea houses on that particular day are booked, and so you're out of luck. So you want to make sure that each of the agents are working appropriately and the checks and balances are in place. Orchestrating all that is it's very complex. It's very complex. So it is not like people often miss the actual complexity when they hear all these stories. I just created this PowerPoint in 2 minutes or 30 seconds. That's what they say. Okay, well, that's great to read, but the practical aspects are very, very different than those
Yeah,
magic hype.
absolutely. So the good news is human jobs are still existing in a couple of years at least, right? I want to talk a bit about the human AI collaboration side of things. How do you effectively manage human oversight in a workflow?
Jonas, great question. Actually, this is why I dedicated an entire chapter on partnership and crafting human agent collaboration. How do you do that? It starts with the design itself. Because you see, with AI, we became more of a natural language inputs. We're not doing this command line, this and then. You just put what you're thinking, and the AI, in this case, AI agents will process that. So the experience that the humans need to have is different. And actually, in the next probably 2 to 3 years, I actually think that we would be moving more and more towards audio centric inputs versus typing. So the interface would completely change. The user interface would be more audio centric. That would actually completely change how the software and AI tools will operate. For the humans and the AI agents to be working effectively, it means the number one factor is you need to develop that trust, right? Humans need to develop that trust. Otherwise, they wouldn't be interacting, and they wouldn't be truthful in giving all the information, right? And they need to have the transparency. The agents need to give, as we just talked about, the confidence levels. They need to give their sources. If it doesn't know the answer, this is where the hallucinations, right? They come, but this is where when you are deploying, you need to make sure that you did all the testing. It needs to tell, okay, this is probably I may not be able to help, or this is the sources I may are not trained on. Depending on, again, there are different ways you can craft those messages. And the other thing, as humans, we like consistency, right? This is why on when Wall Street, right, the companies, when they have a negative or positive, the reaction tends to be over amplified.
Yeah.
It's so the agent behavioral consistency needs to be there, and they need to be reliable. And how do you bring the humans into the loop? And this is, again, there are two aspects. One, I talked about human in the loop and human on the loop, meaning you don't want to bring the human in every little thing. For example, there was actually an $80 million daily transactions. There was one of the AI software we deployed for a U.S. A city. What we were doing was, of course, once with the financial reconciliation, we put, if it passes 95%, then it is automatic. And then if it falls below 95% confidence to 70%, then people will be asked to review it. But it's, again, what we did was we put the dashboards, we put the alert systems all integrated, and then anything that's suspicious, there are techniques, AI techniques to find the outliers. So once something falls below 70% of the confidence, oh, is this transaction real? Is this fraudulent? So that it goes to a different system, and then people, the responsible folks in the finance, they would be alerted, either with the integration of Slack or emails, text messages. So you need to make sure that it's appropriately alerted, appropriately brought in the loop, or what goes into the dashboards is more like, you don't need to worry about it, just as an FYI. So on the loop is like, okay, you just see it, you pull them in, but if before an important decision needs to be done, you have to approve it. In clinicians, for example, when someone's medicine needs to be approved, the pharmacist needs to be in the loop. Otherwise, it won't get done, right? So depending on the use case scenario and the workflow, you need to bring them in. So those are all the elements of having the right human and AI agent or a digital worker partnership the right way.
Let's talk a bit about ROI. You advocate measuring AI success across 5 different areas: operational efficiency, time to market, customer experience, revenue impact, and
Yes.
employee experience. What do you recommend? How should we measure the ROI impact of agents across the company?
Well, when you meet with an executive, what is the first thing that you ask is connecting the AI to the business value, right? The important thing when it comes to the agents, those 5 things are in general are the framework for AI ROI, the aspects to look at. The additional things that AI agents, you need to be very, very cognizant is not just the development costs, but also the data acquisition and the preparation. This comes so frequently, Johannes. It's probably 70-80% of the AI projects don't even get off the ground quickly, is because the data is not ready. It's not quality. It's not readily available. It varies somewhere between 50 to 70+% of the costs of the project are associated with data collection and acquisition. It's hard to
Mhm.
believe that. That's a big cost. And then there are integration costs because you have these databases, these older systems, these dashboards and communication tools, all of those. How do you integrate that? You need to account for that. And the other thing is LLMs, every time you make a call from your agent to an LLM, it's a cost. And then what happens is people, they don't think that, oh, it's just like, okay, you give like an input prompt. It's not as simple as that. And then it just comes back, like the answer. when you have agentic systems, they're doing it multiple times. And then every time you send the prompt to the LLM, it costs you money. And when it is processing, it costs you money. When it is giving you the output, it costs you money. So very quickly, the costs of the LLMs could be huge. So you need to account for all those costs. These are not one-time costs. They are ongoing operational costs. And on the top of that, you need to retrain the model because, data drift can happen. I'll give you an example. There was one of the companies I'm closely associated with. The CEO is a good friend, EasyML. They were working with a fashion designer in Italy, and then they found out it was a most recent dress that was designed was not selling well. And then they deployed their models to find out. The interesting thing was the fashion changes so quickly, right? And the data, you need to be training your models on most recent data. So it is capturing the trends. And this is what actually they discovered when they ran their models training. The most recent data suggested this particular female, this age group prefer the button on a specific area of that dress. How would you have known, right? So what I'm saying is the retraining, the model drift, understanding the drift in the data, and then retraining the models to enable them again on the latest data. These are all ongoing costs. You need to be aware. This is why it's not as simple as, oh, I just created this little presentation with using Gamma. It only took 30 seconds for me. It doesn't work like that. That's a lot of that is hype. The practical aspects involve a lot of the costs. And
in your work with your clients, what are the results that you see working with agents across the different areas?
the coding is quite successful and big. And then the second one is customer side, customer service is very effective. It is big. I have seen as much as uh, probably 70-80% handled by AI and effectively. When I say effectively, that means it's not compromising the customer experience. Because I come from not just the operational efficiency and cost savings, but also how do you make sure that the customer experience is not compromised so the long-term customers are not leaving, right? So those two are big examples. The creative side, Coca-Cola creates ads with AI. It's becoming, the video creation is becoming really good. But it, again, Wall Street Journal did an experiment in order to create a video, high quality video. They had to do that like over 1,000 times. Over 1,000 times. It's not the hype that we see. So it's very effective in making content creation, even in music.
I would also have mentioned a similar list of use cases where agents or AI are particularly relevant. And I'm sure our listeners and watchers, they get pitched a lot from different AI agent and AI vendors in general. And everybody's got this solution for your problem that they don't
Yeah.
even are aware of. As someone who's evaluated countless tools and framework, how do you cut through the noise?
You need to test them. You need to evaluate because I mean, you and me are in the Bay Area. Every time I drive around, everything, you can probably say, hey, my water bottle is also, probably can say, oh, I am AI enabled, right? my glasses, it's getting to that point. The challenge is you need to ask the right questions because everyone says we are AI agent. But if you ask the right questions, you can figure out in the first three questions, they don't have AI or they are not AI enabled. That's so, first of all, ask the right questions. And secondly, even if they have AI, how effective they are. We touched on so many topics from the outputs from the AI agents and how do they orchestrate, how did the ML operations work, and how do they make the output is accurate, there is explainability, governance, all these things. What are important? And the other thing I would also say is everyone has a point solution. What happens is if you are proliferating every solution, then soon the subscription you're paying or the amounts your consumption for all these tools you're paying, it becomes so high because none of them are good at everything. You need to have like in the corporate world, you want to make sure that your total cost of ownership is optimized and you're not creating friction with so many tools. If you're using like 10 tools to get your task done, that's not very efficient. It's creating a lot of friction, too much cost, all those things. Sometimes you may want to go with a point solution because there's nothing else and that would be, a fantastic tool.
Yeah. Between the two of us, what are your 3 questions to determine if the company is building a real AI agent?
I'll tell you a simple case. This is actually a thing that happened with a pharmaceutical client. I want to extract the intelligence from my data sources, but I don't want to write the SQL code. This is like a scientist. I don't want to write the SQL code. Can your AI do it? And then they'll say, oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll give it to you in 1 week. Okay. So what is the accuracy you'll get? I'm not going to accept unless it is 95%. Whatever. You put that very specific. And then how long does it take to train your models to get to that accuracy level? You need to ask those questions, get into some technical depth, and how long does it take for them to show the ROI and how accurate they can be.
Hmm.
And then
Makes
once
sense.
you,
Yeah, it's all about performance these days, right? How do you compose AI agent performance?
one is the accuracy, the other one is how latency is, how quickly it is, because in people, if it is going to take a long time and people will just don't have the patience, right? Or you need to set the expectations and then how much of the workload they can handle, right? Let's say if you have 20 million customers and you need to screen them, is it going to die with so much workload? When I was doing the digital transformation, for example, we were moving to S/4HANA, and the architecture was new, and it was unable to handle. And of course, in SAP needed to change their memory and some of the parameters in the architecture. But unless you subject it to that workloads that you're anticipating, what works greatly during the demo, it would just miserably fail in production. That would compromise the experience. The other thing is I would, as part of it, is make sure that you are doing a very thorough user acceptance testing and your users need to be part of the journey right from the beginning, when they're doing the business requirements and even the initial unit testing, the engineers need to work closely with user testing. So that way you can actually get the progress and then listen to the users right away. And then, the efficiency and performance response times, throughput, and then reliability, uptime, failure recovery. By the way, they can fail. And when you have multiple AI agents, even if one fails, the output is not coming through, right? And then the last one is user experience I just touched on. So those are the 4 buckets, if you will.
Excellent. I want to get back to the superhuman thesis that you touched upon earlier. Now, you are one of the people who believes in AI transforming society for the better.
Mhm.
but you also automated away the need for analysts at Autodesk, right? So how do you bring those realities of the superhuman and people who might risk their job together?
Start with the premise that this is something like a sidekick. This is where the difference comes. Unlike the cloud technology, that is a technology. Everything you're doing from the time you wake up, AI can make things better. That's the premise you start with, and then think, how can AI help me? Again, it's not chasing the shiny objects, but for example, you want to learn something about AI agents or MCP, right? So let's say you don't know what it is, and you want to go a little deeper than just the headlines, right? So you can just say, I can go to Notebook LM, by the way. This is by Google. It's a fantastic tool. And give these, 3, 4 prompts. Again, it makes you coming up with the right prompt. But then you can learn very quickly. So the thing is how you can become superhuman, leveraging AI, how best to leverage AI. So be curious, learn every day, experiment every day. One of my good friends, a retired CEO and a board member now, his background was not technical. And he was telling me he was using Lovable to develop an app that is very specific to his needs. I thought, oh, that's neat. It's probably 3, 4 years ago, unless you had at least some technical background. But now you can do that in a lot of sophisticated things. I'm not saying it completely eliminates the need for people with software skills. That's not the case, but it democratizes in many ways what you can do, and it gives you the capabilities. So learn, be curious, experiment, and constantly upgrade the skills through this process. And think about everything that you're doing in your work or life, and how can the AI help? I keep hearing all these use cases, Johannes, that I didn't think about it. Okay, it's that there are people who would say, "Oh, Notebook LM, how can you make Notebook LM even better?" Oh, I didn't think about that, right? People have so many ideas, and follow people on LinkedIn or YouTube or Twitter. It's just see what is happening, and it it's not rocket science. And if you wanted to become a really good machine learning model developer, that probably that takes a lot of skills, and you may need to get a PhD, whatever, right? But other than that, you can become an expert in AI even without technical background, because there are so many avenues. It doesn't require technical background.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Reddy. I learned a lot today. It was a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. That's it for today from AI to Go. Bye bye and auf Wiedersehen.
AI to Go podcast.